When I bought this house 50 years ago, I paid cash, and all of 4,000 quid. A lot of money in those days, but I went to the council because I couldn't be bothered paying a solicitor to do a search. And I said, what's going to happen down there? And he said, where do you live? 1994, this is the house I bought. He said, oh, I think it's all getting demolished. I said, then what happens? Oh, he said, you get valuation plus 10%. So I thought, 4,400. Now, bear in mind, everybody's on 10 quid a week, so that sounds okay. And 50 years later, they haven't knocked it down, and I haven't decorated it, because what's the point if it's going to get knocked down? This interest in the area, which is Lancaster's last inner city dereliction area, which we're very proud of and have tried to maintain it to the best of our ability. Yeah, it's getting some attention. We'll wait and see.
I don't know why this building in particular got kept up rather than...
Because it was always in use. It's always been a factory building.
It was an old carriage works or something, wasn't it?
So it was a carriage works. It's been a slipper factory and something else. So it's always been in use. That's why they wanted to keep this building, because of its character, its locality, and how people identify with the Lancaster Music Corps. As this building, like an old pub, you would know it as the particular building that it is. And it's always had an identity within Lancaster. We're trying to form like a trinity, yeah, round with the Grand, to make it a cultural area, because a lot of the proposals were more urban housing, and we wanted to make it more a cultural quarter, because it always has been.
Commerce just worth an elements of noise, here bids at length, theatre arise. Commerce every hostile menace brave, Britain's best bulwark, and each subject wave, still roll new treasure to the British Isle, and last peace bid all the empire smile. Okay, this theatre is the third oldest theatre surviving in this country. It was built originally in 1782 by two gentlemen, Austin and Whitlock. Whitlock was actually the brother-in-law of Sarah Siddons, who was the A-list actress of her day. Think of somebody like Helen Mirren or Judi Dench, somebody of that sort of status. And so she performed here, as did people like Edmund Kean, and the theatre prospered during the late 18th, early 19th century. Okay, these guys on the safety curtain, these are characters from the Commedia dell'arte, and it relates to the first ever performance in this theatre in 1782, which was Robinson Crusoe coupled with a harlequinade. And so you have Pantaloon, the gentleman in red and green, you have Harlequin, the guy in blue with a slapstick, and the guy in the middle, the clown, is actually Joseph Grimaldi, who appeared here. He was an extremely popular entertainer. He's tended to be referred to as a clown, but he was a bit of a dancer, comedian, all sorts of things, and he was extraordinarily popular. To hire him for 2 days would cost you, in the equivalent in today's money, of £15,000. Commerce, which wealth and elegance supplies, here bids at length a theatre rise. May commerce every hostile menace brave, Britain's best bulwark, and each subject wave, still roll new treasure to the British Isle, and last peace bid all the empire smile. It's awful, it's awful. Dreadful piece of doggerel.
So down here we're really talking import-export. So this was the side of the river that they could access easier than the other side of the river, just because of how the sandbanks and the silt were sitting. So down here, especially on the Green Air, there was wharfs. That's what's going on. So you've got ships coming in and out. And so Lawson, for instance, he's just one example. He's bringing sugar in and he's also exporting it as well. But people were also renting his wharfs and building other wharfs to bring in things like timber, to bring in things like coal. So all those things that the city needed really were being brought in. And that's the two main sort of halves of what's going on down here is the industry with the wharves, and then also the green air, which is just a general open common area. So you've got loads of hustle and bustle going on down there. As I say, we know that there were things like horse races and foot races going on down there, but it was also just a big area where people could cut wood, set up whatever industries they're doing, maybe making charcoal, something like that, dog racing, that sort of thing went on down here as well. But it was mainly that access to the river which made this area so important for industry.
That is the fly tower up there, so all the back cloths will be flown up out of sight into there and then dropped down again. It's sailing ship technology, literally, from the 18th, 19th centuries.
How many backdrops can be on kind of set up at once?
I think we have 20 bars. These are like spars in a sailing ship. So you have a rope on either end, and then you tape the cloth to the bar, or else you put lighting on there, or other bits and pieces of scenery and so on. And we have Big Jeff, who is up in the fly tower, and he was on ropes and things go up and down. There's in fact a superstition in the theatre generally is not to whistle. You don't have any whistling in a play, basically because in the early days the commands to the guy in the fly tower were by whistle, because on a sailing ship it's the boatswain's whistle that indicate whether the sail is to be brought down or furled up or whatever they call it.
So Pitt Street is, even though it's a tiny street, really good example of the sort of people that were living down here in the 19th and early 20th century, and also the sort of work that they did, but also what effect that would have had on their lives. So for instance, I came across the story of Walter Foxcroft, who lived down here between the 1890s and the 1930s. He lived at 5 Pitt Street, and he was employed by Williamson's, a linoleum maker, like a lot of people in this area were. He worked for them for 42 years, his entire career, until he died in 1930, when he was still employed by Williamson. But also key to his story was that all of his sons were also employed by Williamson. So this entire household, which was him and 2 of his adult sons, were all completely reliant on Williamson's for their money. So during lean periods when Williamson's would lay off their workers, this whole household would have been out of work and out of money. And that we see replicated all the way down places like Pitt Street and some of the other streets down here, meaning that when times were lean, when the factories weren't working, you could have entire streets out of work, and neighbours would then find it very difficult to help each other. So the lives of the people down here were really dominated by certain key industries, and life could be quite precarious.
Yeah, Pitt Street, formerly a densely packed lane of working houses with cellar dwellings. I don't remember there being a cellar dwelling, though there could have been. So we lived around here where the pole is now. Big tall houses. It says on the plaque there, densely packed around here. But my memories of there being 2 tunnels in the cellar. Now that says there was cellar dwelling, but I don't remember that. I think the cellars were dark and damp. But there was 2 tunnels under there, and lots of tunnels around lots of places in here that either led towards the castle or into churches or something like that.
From what I can remember, our house was almost opposite this alleyway, Sugar House Alley. I know my parents came, when I was born, they had a room on Prospect Street, so it was just a room. And I know coming here, was like winning the lottery, actually getting a house that, even though it was rented, was theirs. But there was a wash house where you had to climb wooden steps, and there was a copper boiler that, you know, your parents could light and do the washing in there when it was their turn. But we had like a boiler on the wall and a stone sink.
A stone sink with, I can't remember, there's I think it was that end. There was a pump and a big lead pipe, and the pipe went through the floor, under the floor, through into the cellar, and then took a dive. So anyway, there's a well in the cellar, about 4 or 5 foot across. And I shone a torch in it, and you couldn't see the surface. It's obviously the water was so clear, so I chucked a pebble in, so you could see the ripples, and it's still there. That's the old Shakespeare Hotel. Yeah, that's now student accommodation.
Sometimes you even feel you are being like some kind of a god. You're looking down the earth, because you are. You have a great view. That over there is the kitten court where I live. Well, the price is a bit costly, but the quality is good. There's a lot of times I was working in the city or like going on a bus for campus, and while I was looking at the old buildings, I was thinking, how old are the buildings? Like, would they be older than my grandparents? And this one is the Gillows. That's a student accommodation as well. And on Gillows left is St. Lionel's house. Sugar House is just in the alley between Gillows and St. Lionel's house. And on the other side of the street is the Grand Theatre and Music Co-op. So they have like a statue of one of the city founders, forgot his name, but his family definitely made a lot of fortune during slave trade period. And I think after Black Lives Matter movement, someone painted with red paint on his statue says slave trader. And just a few meters away from the statue, they have like a electrical pole, like a lamp pole. And on that pole, someone put a sticker says, protect our countryside, close the borders. I don't know if you ever heard about Sugar House. Now it's a nightclub, but it used to be a warehouse to store all the sugar and rum came from Africa places.
Why is there no base? It's a river.
This place it always looks so much worse during the day. Like, you come at night and it's the best place ever, and then you come during the day and it's grimy. With the school I was in, it was built, I could recite the story off by heart, but it was built by Thomas Ripley, who worked on trading ships, and that's where they got their money from. And they built the school for, I think it was orphans at the time, and they went and grew up there with the money that was left when he died. But it was always really interesting because we knew that from the time period that the founders were in, the area was probably going to have quite a strong connection to the slave trade and stuff, but it was never really brought up in schools because these were the creators. We literally had statues of them in the church. It was a very big deal. But yeah, we all sort of had this underlying feeling of that the school was very connected to that, and the area was. It just didn't really get spoken about too much.
The interesting thing about the mill race was it was tidal. When the tide was up, you could go down Pitt Street and look through the gratings and see the height of the water. So obviously, if the tide's as high as the mill race, nothing's going to happen because the water's not going anywhere. Unless the wheel ran backwards, of course, I wouldn't know. But that was of interest, but that's been stopped now because they have a sea gate on the loom. Stops it becoming tidal. Over the years, we've seen many changes, especially in the traffic and the job market. The town isn't as busy as it used to be, and small businesses such as ours, I think we're really on the way out.
It might have been a good idea in the 60s, but thinking about it, they're wanting to move people back now with the canal corridor, aren't they? They're wanting to rebuild these properties, but they're not going to come back if there's no facilities.
There is this issue because we are down what's effectively now a side street. A lot of people don't realise we're here or assume we're the Dukes. We quite often get parties going to the Dukes and they try and sit down and then they get chucked out and, oh, you're in the ground.
I think it's probably the most exciting bit of the city, really. If this gets open again and we've got Cantina and Golden Lion and things, I think it's probably going to end up being the best bit of the city. I think a lot of this area stood empty for a long time, but hopefully with this and other stuff going on, then it'll be a new lease of life for it, really.
Yeah, but people are sure I can take a picture or what? It's recording.